Every day, about 200,000 people cross through the San Ysidro port of entry. Sometimes they wait as long as 3 hours to get into the U.S. Now, the federal government plans to build booths to inspect cars before they head into Mexico, raising concerns of long lines on the U.S. side of the border. Joining me to talk about the issue and the potential environmental impact is Fronteras Desk reporter Adrian Florido and David Flores, an architect in San Ysidro. Thank you both so much for joining me here. Adrian, my first question is for you. Tell us the basic project. What is that going to look like? How many booths? What are we going to see?
Well, like you said, the port of entry at San Ysidro is very busy, the busiest in the world, the land port of entry. And so what the government is doing is undertaking a very large expansion project to try to move cars more efficiently, to cut those northbound wait times down from what is often 3 hours or more to 30 minutes tops, they hope, over the next several years. But one of the interesting things that they're also doing is...
So I'm just sorry to interrupt, I just want to clarify. So when you say northbound, they're trying to help ease the traffic problem coming from Mexico into the U.S.
Right.
by pre-screening or doing inspections on the north side, on our side of the border going into Mexico?
No, they're trying to do that by building more booths on the south side. Now, that's one part of the project. Another part of the project that is a couple of years away is that they're planning on building inspection booths for cars heading from the U.S. into Mexico. That currently doesn't exist. Currently, the Mexican government does inspect cars on a pretty sporadic basis as you're heading south, and now the U.S. is also building its own inspection booths so that U.S. officials can also inspect cars as they're leaving. Obviously, a big reason for this is a concern over the trafficking of money and guns into Mexico.
Right, weapons getting across from there. And this is where the crux of the matter comes in. And David, I want to ask you about this. This is the concern that those types of inspection booths on this side of the border could cause a lot longer lines.
Right.
So the environmental impact on that, you've done some research on that. Tell us what you've done and what you've found.
We have. So over a 2-year period, we received funding to do a 2-year study looking at several aspects, both kind of the social aspects of crossing, like border crossers, what are they experiencing as they cross through, as well as an environmental aspect, which looks at air quality and what populations are most affected by having to wait as a pedestrian, 2-3 hours to cross, or the community itself in San Ysidro. So we did the first ever air quality analysis community-wide for San Ysidro.
And you actually presented that to whom, and what was the response to that?
So we've presented, myself and Dr. Quintana from San Diego State presented to different bodies. One is presented to the General Services Administration as bringing out initial information about the results that we were identifying. We've presented to SANDAG, the local regional planning agency, and several other state air quality boards.
So obviously one of the big concerns here is that, if you've got cars waiting for 3 hours to get into the U.S., that's a lot of cars just idling, spewing exhaust.
Exactly.
And so what was interesting about David's research that they found was that the closer they took air quality samples from different points in San Ysidro, the neighborhood just north of the border in San Diego, and found that the closer you got to that long line of cars, obviously the worse the air quality. And so the big concern is that if southbound inspections are going to begin, that is, cars being inspected as they go into Mexico, that there might be a long line on the north side, and that might augment that pollution
kind of
problem.
leak over onto our side.
And we've already started to see some of those impacts. Right now, sporadically, the Border Patrol will stop all vehicle traffic. And they have actually done inspections, stopping traffic in the middle of the lanes. And we've seen about 2.5 to 3 mile queuing lines already into the community of San Ysidro. So I-5 going north into the rest of San Diego, the stretch is maybe 4.5 miles before you exit or leave the community of San Ysidro. So it's almost outside of the community.
Well, let me do one thing. I have to talk about Chris Maston, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. He response to this was basically, he sent us, he talked to you, Adrian, and we got this statement. And here's what he had to say. Most of our energy is clearly focused on travelers and goods coming into the United States, but we do recognize that we have a responsibility to perform those outbound checks, and we're going to do that. He did not address the environmental impact. Right. That said, we only have about 30 seconds left. You're doing some things preemptively in the schools. You have some ideas on how to maybe preemptively, if this moves forward, to take care of it.
We do. So we see the most affected population as being children. Through other research, children under 8 are the most impacted with heavy toxins in the air because of their physical aspect. And so we're concerned for the school populations that are closest to the border. So working with the EPA and their school flag program to warn the community about heavy polluted days, we'll work in some kind of programming to make sure that that the schools have alternative programming to keep kids indoors and at least minimize the time that they spend outside.
So we'll certainly be following this, both your prevention and what's actually going to happen, Andrew.
And in fairness to Customs and the GSA, they say this is still several years away. There's still design elements that aren't known, and so we don't really know what the impacts will be. And maybe we'll address them, when they come up, but we don't know yet.
And that could change. Technology could change. Right. Maybe there's more electric cars. We don't know.
Maybe.
David, Adrian, thank you both so much for being here.
Thanks,
Thank you, Peggy.